Chapter 69 to 75. At the border of Land of Earth and Land of Grass. Sandaime Tsuchikage, Inoki looked at the information on the piece of paper in his hands and said, "So, the commander from Konoha facing us is Shimura Danzo?" The Jonin commander standing by Tsuchikage-sama's side replied, "Yes, Tsuchikage-sama, according to the information collected by the intelligence team, Shimura Danzo is commanding the Konoha front." Rock Village suddenly assembled its army at the border of Land of Grass, so Konoha had to take some countermeasures. Shimura Danzo of the Konoha Council was assigned by Sandaime Hokage to guard the front line against the Rock Village. Udatane Koharu was responsible to go to Sand Village in person to discuss alliance matters. While Mitokado Hamura had to go to the coastline on the east of the Land of Fire to prevent raids from the Mist Village. Such pieces of information are difficult to conceal, so the Rock Village Intelligence Department easily intercepted them. After pondering a little, Tsuchikage asked, "What about the Hokage himself?" Jonin leader shook his head. "There is no accurate information yet, but most likely opinion states that he is still sitting in the Konoha village." Heh. Hokage is really calm about the situation. Tsuchikage smiled mockingly, then as if he suddenly remembered something, and asked, "By the way, is there any news about the shinobi responsible for killing Iwamoto and his team?" As the captain of one of the remaining few beheading units in the Rock Village, Iwamoto was an elite jonin of the Rock Village. So, his death undoubtedly made Tsuchikage very angry and annoyed. According to the intelligence sent by the spies planted within the Land of Demons, it was Team 11 of the Konoha Umbu Black Ops that killed Iwamoto and his team. Tsuchikage frowned hearing this. Konoha's Umbu. No matter which village, the identity of the Umbu is highly confidential and in some cases only known to the Kage himself, so finding out more detailed information about this Team 11 wouldn't be an easy task, even for Rock Village. Did this Team 11 make an appearance on any of the battlefield yet? Tsuchikage asked while holding his chin. The Jonin browsed through all the documents and pieces of intelligence at his hands and replied, "No, Tsuchikage-sama. The battle between the Konoha and Cloud Village naturally attracted the attention of all the shinobi villages, and among them, Rock Village undoubtedly placed special attention on that front to have all the first-hand information. Therefore, at the beginning when the intelligence about the sudden raids from the Cloud Village was known, Rock Village dispatched a large number of ninjas proficient in sneaking and information gathering into the Land of Fire, to receive the intelligence on any changes in the war situation on that front at the latest. In the battle of intelligence gathering, Konoha undoubtedly suffered a big loss this time. Several lines of defense at the border was so easily breached by the secret raid of the Cloud Shinobi, again leading to the loss of both material and personnel. Tsuchikage-sama is of course very happy seeing Konoha suffer. If Cloud keeps up with this speed, they should be able to attack Konoha village within a few weeks. This battle completely exposed Konoha's current state. Every village was able to see that Konoha village is no longer the invincible existence that overwhelms the entire ninja world single-handedly. However, the Jonin leader on the side wasn't as optimistic as Tsuchikage-sama. He shook his head negatively and said, "I am afraid it wouldn't be that easy, Tsuchikage-sama." After the Toad San and Jiraiya arrived at the Cloud front, Konoha's situation is much better, making Cloud Village's offensive temporarily contained. So far no one has any idea as to why Jiraiya arrived at the battlefield a whole week late than expected, but his arrival did slow down Cloud's offensive. Tsuchikage pondered a little, and said, "Konoha's reaction is a bit strange this time. Hokage should know that the combat power on the battlefield is insufficient, but there are no signs of the Uchiha clan participating like in the Third Shinobi War. Then there is no trace of this seemingly strong Team 11 of the Umbu Black Ops. Moreover, Jiraiya arrived later at the war. Hokage himself is still sitting in the village. I have a feeling that there is something more to it than meets the eye. Arrange some ninjas to check this out. I want to know why is this the case." "Yes, Tsuchikage-sama, I will arrange it." Land of Fire, Cloud Camp. After receiving the news from the rear, Yujito Ni and Cloud Head Ninja looked at each other in confusion. The content of the message only has few words: "Pause the attack." Killer B raised his head and asked the two who were looking at each other in confusion, "Well, why did Brother A send such an order?" The head ninja shook his head in confusion. "This is simply incomprehensible. We have already destroyed Konoha's frontal defense. If we stop now, then the previous efforts would all be in vain." Yujito Ni suggested, "Could it be that something happened at the village?" Both Killer B and Head Ninja agreed to Yujito Ni's suggestion. Otherwise, there is no reason for Reikage-sama to send such absurd orders. Well, what choice do they have? Reikage-sama ordered, they have to follow through. So, the offensive from the Clue village's end temporarily stopped. Land of Fire, Konoha camp facing Cloud offense. Nara Shikaku walked into the head tent and quickly said, "The opposite side seems to have stopped attacking." Standing on the side, Hyuga Hizashi frowned at Nara Shikaku's words and asked, "They are obviously on the dominating side, why did they suddenly stop?" Jiraiya, who was sitting at the center, knew the most possible reason, so he said at this time, "Most likely old man's strategy worked." Having said that, he briefly explained that Hokage-sama gave orders to the Umbu Black Ops to destroy the secret warehouse of the Cloud Village at the border of the Land of Lightning to slow down the Cloud Offensive. Everyone who heard about this information couldn't help but sigh. This kind of mission of sneaking into the enemy's territory involves too much risk, even if it is some small shinobi village, not to mention Cloud Village being one of the 5 great shinobi villages. For someone to have completed this task is way beyond expectations, but everybody was extremely grateful to them. At least now the Konoha side has a temporary breathing period. Land of Hot Water. Kuroto, who was freshening up by the lake, untied the black goggle that you gave him. The clear water in the lake reflected the Byakugan in his eye sockets. Looking at his reflection in the lake intently, Kuroto found that his dojutsus were indeed Byakugan, although their purity has increased slightly. They are the Byakugan, no doubt about that. After repeated confirmation, Kuroto closed his eyes and injected chakra into them. After doing this for a few seconds, he reopened them. This time his eyes flashed with the royal blue light. The floral pattern formed by the white irises looked like a beautiful star in the night sky. As soon as he opened them, Kuroto's field of vision became clearer. He could even perceive the linings on the bark of a small tree far away. Thank goodness, the Tenseigan was only dormant, not lost. Kuroto chuckled and breathed a sigh of relief. He finally learned the method to be able to activate and deactivate the Tenseigan. After several more attempts to check for any signs of abnormality, Kuroto was sure that his Tenseigan can be closed just like the Uchiha. In the normal state, he can use the Byakugan similar to Sharingan, and at a further stage, he can activate the Tenseigan similar to Menjikyu. But that wasn't it. Kuroto checked several times and was surprised to find that as soon as he deactivates the Tenseigan, the curse seal on his forehead activates. This discovery really made him interested in the cage bird. This curse seal is obviously not simple as it may seem. The secrets hidden within it are much deeper than one would expect. Suddenly, Kuroto found that this curse seal seems to be of great research value. Since he can now freely activate and deactivate the Tenseigan, so there was obviously no need to wear the dark goggles anymore. After all, wearing the goggles also has a considerable impact on his field of vision, especially at night. The dark color of the lens interferes with his insight. So, after putting the goggles in the ninja bag around his waist, Kuroto got up and returned to the small cave where the Team 11 was hiding. As soon as Guy saw Kuroto walking in, he smiled and said, "Ha ha ha, I couldn't even recognize you for a second, looks quite strange without the goggles." Kuroto didn't mind Guy and observed him while asking, "How is your condition?" Guy immediately gave his nice guy pose, a thumbs up, wink, and a winning smile showing his front teeth, complete with the proverbial ping, and while laughing enthusiastically said, "Don't worry, I am Konoha Sublime Blue Beast of Prey. Such small injuries will not stop me from brimming with the power of youth." And Kuroto has no doubt about Guy's words. Undoubtedly, Guy's resilience is far extraordinary than one might think. If ordinary people push themselves as hard as he does in his training, they will not only be physically overwhelmed but even mentally collapse. This time the injuries he suffered were not minor but only a few days of rest and he can already jump around. So he only shook his head helplessly at Guy's enthusiasm and walked forward. Going further inside the cave, Kuroto found Shisui chatting with Kakashi in low voice. Seeing both of them a little serious, Kuroto asked casually, "What are talking about with such serious looks?" Shisui glanced at Kakashi and seeing that the other party nodded, he said to Kuroto in a weird tone, "Kuroto-san, Captain Kakashi has awakened Menjikyu Sharingan." Kuroto looked at Kakashi, "Did you awaken at the valley?" Kakashi, who was still in weakness, shook his head negatively, "I don't know much." Obviously, Kuroto isn't surprised about Kakashi awakening the Menjikyu, because as far as he remembers, Kakashi did have it in the original series. It was about the same time when Obito awakened his Menjikyu, probably because of the resonance between the two and the intense emotional fluctuation that the two experienced due to Rin's death. It's just that Kakashi might have not realized this fact until now, but his battle at the valley in the Land of Lightning probably allowed him to learn of this fact. Seeing that Kakashi was still in pretty bad condition, Kuroto didn't ask for any more information. Besides, he didn't want to show his interest or familiarity with the information on the Menjikyu, as it would bring a lot of unnecessary trouble and suspicion. After all, for a Hyuga to have such knowledge on the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan is indeed suspicious. There are already other people who have a deep interest in the Sharingan as well as Manjikyu, Shimura Danzo in the village, and Orochimaru outside the village are a few of the examples. There is also Obito being hidden in the dark, who plans to destroy the Uchiha clan as well as weaken Konoha, and not to mention the freak Setsu, who Kuroto can't even begin to think about. Kuroto doesn't want to become the target of their focus, as it would only bring way too much trouble upon him. Seeing Kuroto-kun not very interested in Kakashi-san's Manjikyu, Shisui didn't say much. It's just that he was already in a dumbfounded state. Never in his life would he have thought that a non-Uchiha member who transplanted the Sharingan could awaken the legendary Manjikyu revered by the Uchiha. In his opinion, the very existence of Captain Kakashi's Manjikyu is the biggest mockery of Uchiha's pride. Countless Uchihas who have been hailed as geniuses failed to awaken the Manjikyu. Even now, as far he knows, he is the only Uchiha to have awakened the Manjikyu. And the power of Manjikyu even terrifies him. He fears that this Manjikyu would only bring ominousness to both the village and the Uchiha. This is also the reason why he guards this power that represents the Uchiha's pride so carefully, and here he is now witnessing Captain Kakashi, who is not even an Uchiha, to have awakened it inexplicably. This is way beyond hilarious. Shisui doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fortunately, Shisui's inner pride has already been torn to shreds by Kuroto-san not long ago. In his belief, the proud Uchiha have obviously been defeated by the Hyuga clan. At least in his thinking, the power of Manjikyu cannot rival Kuroto-san's power he witnessed at the valley. Therefore, this time it was much easier for him to accept the loss of Uchiha. After all, Captain Kakashi is also the son of White Fang. It should be acceptable, shouldn't it? This was his question to himself. Shisui's complicated mental activities were unknown to Kuroto and Kakashi. One was immersed in his own spiritual world, while Kuroto was pondering over the events that took place in the past few days. This battle at the valley again taught him a lesson. Even if he has a lot of whole cards in his hand, he must remain cautious, otherwise, he may lose his life in just a split second and wouldn't even get the chance to use those whole cards. And this thing almost happened this time. Although he had the Kazekage puppet with him, and he could have easily escaped using it, but just one small negligence almost made him lose his life. It must never be forgotten that this is the shinobi world, the very same shinobi world where even the Jubi Jinchuriki Madara was left helpless in the face of Black Zetsu's sneak attack, and even Kagaya was sealed twice. Even a bit of carelessness isn't an option. You have to be vigilant even when you are as strong as the Sage of the Six Paths or the Chakra Ancestor. The biggest gain is undoubtedly the information he obtained from the giant Tenseigan about the method to enter Tenseigan Chakra mode, as well as using the other techniques like Golden Will Reincarnation Explosion and Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion, using the truth-seeking orbs. In fact, now Kuroto can even understand Kagaya, Madara, Nagato, and Tonari's god complex. The moment he entered the Tenseigan Chakra mode, Kuroto himself felt like he was a god, and all the enemies were just some tiny little ants he could crush with just a wave of his hand. This feeling of course made him very happy, unlike those that might feel disgusted about it. But it's a pity that those Otsutsuki descendants on the moon reacted way too quickly and sealed the chakra flow of the giant Tenseigan, so he didn't have enough time to familiarize himself with the Tenseigan Chakra mode. But Kuroto is not too much worried about it. After that incident, there are traces of Himura's chakra left on him, and with enough rest and recuperation, his original chakra has also almost recovered. Although with his chakra volume, using Tenseigan Chakra mode for too long wouldn't be ideal, familiarizing himself with it should be possible. However, Kuroto wasn't in any hurry. Such things should be taken steadily one at a time. Moreover, those Otsutsuki descendants on the moon are also searching the shinobi world quite a lot, so laying low for a while is the best course of option for him for now at least. After returning to the Land of Fire, he would test the Tenseigan Chakra mode. The short resting period allowed the Team 11 to recover a little bit, and now what to do next became an urgent issue before them. The 4 members of the Team 11 sat on the ground spreading a map to discuss their further course of action. While pointing at the map, Shisui was the first to speak. Cloud Village has too many spies infiltrated within the Land of Hot Water, so us staying in this territory for too long is definitely not a wise choice. I suggest we choose to leave immediately using the Unison route. The Unison route, referred to by Shisui, goes along the easternmost coastline of Land of Hot Water back to the Land of Fire. Judging from the map, this route seems to be the most unsafe, as it lies in the combined area of control of Konoha Village, Cloud Village, and Mist Village. But for this very reason, this Unison route can, in fact, be considered the safest, because no village has absolute control over it. For this reason, Unison route has become a unique zone with many wandering and retired ninjas hiding here. Guy immediately nodded at Shisui's proposal. Well, I think it will a good choice. With the current combat power of Team 11, as long as they don't get too unlucky and directly encounter the main combat force of Cloud Village or any supposed ninja's village, they should be able to cross any territory without much difficulty. However, the captain of Team 11, Kakashi, hasn't spoken his opinion yet. He seems to be considering something. Kuroto guessed that Kakashi has some other plans, so he asked, Kakashi, if you have something in mind, just say it directly. After all, we are a team, who have already experienced life and death battles. I think you should be comfortable in expressing your thoughts by now. What Kuroto said isn't wrong, even if Kakashi concealed the details of the previous mission and led Team 11 into such a dangerous situation that almost got them killed, but nobody could blame him. The mission was personally issued by Hokage-sama, and as the member of Umbu Black Ops, they must complete his orders. Kakashi doesn't have any right to reject or question Hokage-sama's orders, not to mention he took the most dangerous part of the task upon himself and almost got himself killed, therefore nobody blamed him. Listening to Kuroto's words, Kakashi sighed. Pointing at the current location of Team 11 on the map, he slowly said, as Shisui said, we have already completed our mission and should retreat to the Land of Fire as quickly as possible. However, everyone, think about where are we currently. From one perspective, we are stuck between the Cloud Raid troops at the front while the Cloud Village at the rear, but from another perspective, our position is too critical. Kuroto understood what Kakashi is trying to say. Well, you are right about that. Indeed, our current position is extremely dangerous for us, but at the same time our stay in the Land of Hot Water is like a knife at the enemy's throat that can strike any time. I am afraid that the Cloud troops wouldn't be rest assured until they eliminate us. Not only Team 11 destroyed the secret warehouse but also eliminated more than 300 ninjas, so no matter how conceited Cloud Village may be, they wouldn't dare to ignore such an existence hidden behind the rear of Cloud Raid forces. As soon as the Cloud Village discovers that Team 11 is hidden within the territory of Land of Hot Water, their frontal offensive will obviously weaken and some of it might even be directed towards chase and hunt of Team 11. Shisui also thought a little and said, yes, Cloud ninjas don't know about our injuries, they may estimate us to be a little weakened to exhausted, but we can utilize this ignorance to our advantage. As long as we hide well enough and occasionally choose to strike to scare them critically, they wouldn't be able to concentrate entirely on the Konoha front. Well, indeed, Team 11 is not entirely in a battle-ready state. Kakashi has still not recovered completely. Although Guy is fit enough to jump around, his fighting power is still not restored entirely due to several fractures. Shisui is in a better state than two of them, but he is still not at his 100% combat effectiveness. Due to using Susanoo for too long, he also suffered from chakra overdraft, so he is also in a weakened state, so at most he can play at around 50% to 60% of his full combat potential. At least, my situation is better than the others. I have already recovered about 80% of my chakra, and there are close to no injuries as they were already healed from the chakra of Giant Tenseigan as well as because of using the secret technique of physical regeneration, so my combat effectiveness is almost close to 100% as my chakra recovered, thought Kuroto. After some more discussion, Team 11 reached a consensus and decided to extend their stay within Land of Hot Water to harass the raid troops of Cloud Village. Kuroto agreed because he knows that Cloud Village has no intention to expand the conflict to full-scale war. Once the situation reaches a stalemate or disadvantageous, Cloud Village should propose peace talks. And if Team 11 is the one that caused Cloud and Konoha to sit on the negotiation table, then it would be considered a great honor. Not to mention their authority in the Umbu will also skyrocket. Take Namikaze Minato as an example. Nothing could build reputation and authority faster than the meritorious services in war period. So, this course of action is natural, the best suited in Kuroto's opinion. Land of Fire, Cloud Raid Camp. Through active communication with the village, several commanders of Cloud Village including Killer Bee, Cloud Head Ninja, and the young, Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito finally learned why Reikage-sama issued the absurd order of pausing the attack against Konoha forces. Holding the piece of paper in his hand, even Killer Bee's always cheerful face was gloomy. The news from Reikage-sama mentioned that the 4 secret warehouses of the Cloud Village spread around different parts of the Land of Lightning were all attacked by the Umbu Black Ops of Konoha Village within a short period of 2 days. But that wasn't it. At the location of one of the warehouses, more than 300 Cloud ninjas were found dead, with no signs of the enemy around, whether injured, dead, or alive. This news surprised all the 3 sitting around. The youngest Yujito folded her hands around the chest and said coldly, huh. Konoha also knows some tricks. Cloud Head Ninja was more worried. Konoha was able to get intelligence about the location of the secret warehouses. This isn't too surprising, because of the transportation of goods. it is indeed difficult to cover up all the tracks, but they were able to wipe out more than 300 of our men. This is not something to be taken lightly. Although Yujito Ni is a proud kunoichi, she also knows that it is not an easy task for just some random Umbu squad to kill more than 300 shinobi, so thinking a little she asked, among Konoha's high-level combat personnel who hasn't made an appearance on any battlefront yet? The Jonin secretary on the side immediately replied, according to the information we have gathered, so far only the patriarch of the Uchiha, and the Hyuga, as well as the Hokage-sama himself, hasn't made an appearance on any battlefront. Cloud Head Ninja also gave his analysis. The main family of the Hyuga clan rarely shows up on the battlefield, and that too when the situation is too dire. This was the case even in the Third Shinobi War, and going so deep into the enemy territory isn't something the Hyuga clan could afford, so they can be ruled out. There was something weird with the Uchiha this time. There is no news of any Uchiha being on any battlefield. This wasn't the case in the Third Shinobi War, so in my opinion, the warehouse where our 300 men died should have been attacked by the Uchiha. At this time Yujito Ni suggested, it has to be the Uchiha clan and their patriarch, and if not them then it can only be the Sandaime Hokage himself. Both Killer Bee and the Cloud Head Ninja nodded at her conclusion. They also agree that no one else in Konoha has this kind of power. As one of the great shinobi village, Cloud Village has enough intelligence network to know of the people that might be responsible for this attack. In Yujito Ni's view, if there is someone who could lead a shinobi team and complete such a difficult secret raid behind the enemy lines, except for the now defected Snake Sannin and the deceased Yellow Flash, there is only Wicked Eye Fugaku of the Uchiha clan and Hokage-sama himself, so naturally, those two became the target of her suspicion. However, before they could proceed with further countermeasure, a Cloud Ninja hurriedly walked into the head camp and said, "I am extremely sorry for the intrusion, but an emergency transmission has been sent from the village." Receiving the news, Killer Bee, Yujito Ni, and Head Shinobi were again surprised. According to the latest piece of news, although 3 of the 4 secret warehouses did suffer some damage, the attacking Umbu were captured alive. After the torture, Cloud was able to extract information out of them. And the name of Konoha Umbu Team 11 has appeared in the vision of Cloud's senior officials. However, this information is even more shocking than previously. A 4-person Umbu squad wiped away not only entire warehouse but also more than 300 of our ninjas. Yujito Ni muttered in surprise, and after a short pause she continued, "Could it be that Reikage-sama made some mistake?" Bee and Head Ninja were equally surprised by this information. Even in the Cloud Village's side only Yujito Ni and Killer Bee have such ability because of being the human column pillar of the tailed beast. Being able to flatten a whole valley is not a joke. The chakra requirement to achieve something of this level is not possessed by just some Umbu ninjas. In other words, ordinary ninjas cannot do something of this degree in just one night. So, if Team 11 could cause such damage to Cloud Village side, then there was only one thought in the minds of the senior Cloud officials. Konoha Umbu Team 11 must be eliminated at all cost. This idea took root in the hearts of everyone. The 3 present here glanced at each other, and finally, Yujito Ni stood up and said, "I'll kill them." Land of hot water. Enemy attack. Be careful everyone, he is behind. Hurry up and send a signal for help. In the chaotic atmosphere, Kuroto holding his Kusanagi sword rushed amidst the Cloud transport unit. The leader of the team, a Cloud Chunin, immediately raised his kunai to block the enemy's incoming sword strike. Heh! Idiot! Upon seeing this action, Kuroto raised the corner of his mouth. He couldn't remember how many ninjas have already tried to block his strike with an ordinary kunai, and without exception all of them. Ding! With a crisp metal collision sound, the Chunin leader together with the kunai in his hand was cut in half by the Kusanagi sword. Without the lead of Chunin leader, the remaining genin hardly pose a resistance and were one by one killed by him. The last left genin, who knew he wasn't going to survive, resolutely activated the detonation symbol hidden in the transporter, making it all explode, as a result destroying it entirely. Kuroto, who has already seen this scene happen more than a few times even during the Third Shinobi War, wasn't surprised by the genin's actions and easily avoided the resulting explosion. His purpose is obviously not the materials, so why take such unnecessary risks? After taking a quick round around the battlefield and checking that all of the enemy ninjas were dead for sure, he picked up all the kunai cut in half and put it in a storage scroll. If the Cloud ninjas that will come to check here found out the broken kunai remaining on the battlefield, the Cloud Village will come to know that one of the shinobi on the enemy side is using a high-grade sword based on the smooth cut. Once this information is known, they will naturally take countermeasures, and how can Kuroto allow himself to let go of such an advantage? After finally confirming that there were no more traces left, Kuroto didn't stay here any longer and immediately left the site. Not long after Kuroto left, Cloud Village's Nibi Jinchuriki led a group of Cloud ninjas and rushed here because of the help signal. Seeing an already messy sight, bloody corpses, and the blown-up transporter, the faces of Cloud ninjas were ridden with anger. Yujito Ni herself couldn't hold back any longer as her pupils turned into tailed beasts. At this time a Cloud Jonin came over. Shaking his head, he reported, "No survivors." Although Yujito Ni was burning with anger, she suppressed herself and asked, "Any signs that indicate their identity?" Jonin again shook his head. "I am afraid no. All we know is that the enemy uses a sword damped with some kind of unknown poison, based on the method of killing. As for which sword and which poison, what is the proficiency, identity, and retreat, there are no signs." Gritting her teeth in frustration, she snarled viciously, "Send 4-man squads in all possible routes, and find any trace. The enemy must not have gone too far." "Yes." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following her order, the Cloud ninjas one after another disappeared using the body flicker technique. While running along, Kuroto perceived a shinobi squad coming in his direction. He smiled slightly and immediately used the shadow clone jutsu. The main body and the clone nodded at each other and separated into two different directions. After using the shadow clone to escape the chase of the enemy squad, Kuroto came to a crevice on a high cliff, which was not only well hidden but also provided him with a good field of vision. With Kuroto's insight and perception of the Tenseigan, this was the best hiding place. While chewing a military ration pill, Kuroto reapplied the poison on his sword and thought about his next move. In the past week alone, Kuroto successfully attacked and destroyed 3 transportation units. Although no materials were obtained, neither was it too big damage for the Cloud Village compared to those more than 300 men that died, but it did bring their attention in this area. The small movements made by the Team 11 have become a headache for the Cloud Village. The front line is unstable because of Jiraiya's presence, while the rear is unable to solve Team 11, as such all the momentum of Cloud Village has dropped. Such abnormal behavior immediately attracted not only Konoha's but also other villages' attention, that are watching this conflict very closely. And everyone unanimously cast their sights on the land of hot water, which is locked between the land of lightning and land of fire, as if the activities going on here will be the key to determining the direction of the conflict. Team 11 has now become the #1 target of the Cloud Village, as a result of which more and more combat force is deployed for the siege of Team 11. It all started with just a single Jonin squad. And now not only the Jinchuriki was called from the front lines but even 20 Jonin squads are searching for the traces of Team 11 in the land of hot water. This level of deployment is obviously done against Kage-class combat powers. Suddenly Kuroto was brought of his thoughts. Just now he sensed that his shadow clone disappeared. Of course, this wasn't the issue. The purpose of the shadow clone was to act as a decoy in his stead, but what surprised Kuroto was that it disappeared abruptly, and there was no sign of the identity of the enemy in the memory returned. This only means that whoever was responsible, insta-killed his shadow clone. Now, this is interesting. Although, Kuroto isn't 100% proficient in the shadow clone jutsu yet, and he needs to improve it, he still has some degree of confidence, not to mention the clone also had about 50% of his combat power and dojutsu insight. And still, he couldn't find the trace of who was responsible. This is surprising. Leaning against the mountain wall, Kuroto looked in the direction where the shadow clone disappeared and smiled leisurely. Who could be such a strong guy? Of course, many strong people can defeat Kuroto in the current shinobi world, but very few of them are capable enough that his shadow clone couldn't even perceive him, her. And specifically, to the Cloud Village, there is only one such person. Could it really be Yandame Reikage-sama? Guessed Kuroto as he put his kusanagi into the scabbard. Judging from the Cloud's reaction so far, Team 11's plan has undoubtedly been a success. If, as Kuroto guessed, Reikage-sama has also come out personally, it just proves that Cloud Village cannot ignore their movements anymore. If Reikage-sama has also joined the siege, it would be best to stop disturbing Cloud's transportation line. Thought Kuroto. Yandame Reikage is not just some ordinary ninja. In terms of speed, he is unparalleled in the current shinobi world. Even Yandame Hokage-sama might have been inferior to Reikage-sama if not for the Flying Thunder God technique. Facing someone like him is undoubtedly looking for death, which is something Kuroto doesn't want to experience. And since Team 11's plan was to harass the transportation lines at the rear of the Cloud Assault troops, so Kuroto will obviously not choose to continue if Reikage-sama himself has come after them. In the face of powerhouses like the Reikage-sama, as long as he lives, it would be his victory. So, without further ado, Kuroto gathered all his equipment and retreated to the small cave where Team 11 was hiding. Land of hot water, Team 11's retreat point. Shui, who returned not long ago, saw Kuroto-san's arrival, asked, "Kuroto-san, how did it go on your end?" Kuroto smiled, "I managed to eliminate 3 teams this week, how about you?" Shui replied, "As expected of Kuroto-san, even when I searched for the whole week, I only managed to eliminate 1 team." Shui doesn't have long-range detection ability like Kuroto, so his searching efficiency is naturally inferior to Kuroto. Not to mention he hasn't even recovered all his combat power, so he has to be very cautious in choosing the right target, therefore, less effective. Guy, who stayed at the cave to recover and train, whispered at this time, "Next time I will also come with you." Because of their injuries, Guy and Kakashi weren't responsible for carrying out the harassment work, so they have been training and recovering for the past few days. It's just that with Guy's energetic temperament, it is difficult to stay silent listening to Kuroto and Shui discuss the results of the attack on Cloud. It makes him feel kind of itchy. "You better stay here." Kuroto shook his head, and immediately mentioned how his shadow clone disappeared inexplicably. "I suspect that Reikage-sama himself has arrived at the land of hot water to eliminate us." Shui said in a surprised tone, "Kuroto-san, what did you do to Reikage-sama?" Shui is now really worried about what Kuroto-san might have done to Reikage-sama. In his opinion, the strength that Kuroto-san showed back at the valley was definitely more than enough to not only fight but also suppress Reikage-sama. And if something happened to Reikage-sama, the conflict between Konoha and Cloud will escalate to an all-out war. However, Shusui's reaction left both Guy and Kakashi dumbfounded. After a silence when nobody spoke, Kakashi asked weakly, If Kuroto met Reikage-sama, we should be worried about him, not about the Reikage-sama, isn't that the case?" Guy also nodded in agreement. Obviously, Reikage-sama is not something he can handle yet. Kuroto also helplessly glanced at Shui, and secretly thought, "Shui, do you have some sort of misunderstanding about my strength?" Unlike the Reikage-sama who was somewhat arrogant and reckless in the original series, the current Yondaime Reikage who was totally overwhelmed by Yellow Flash in the Third Shinobi War should be quite cautious. And fighting against a speed-type ninja, not to mention the cautious one, it would be extremely difficult for Kuroto to do something. If he had the support of the giant Tenseigan on the moon, Kuroto wouldn't have been that worried, but without it, by simply relying on his own chakra, just being able to survive is more than enough of an achievement. What's more, there would definitely a large number of Cloud elites around Reikage-sama. So, anyone with the idea of seeking trouble with the other party would most likely be an idiot in Kuroto's books. After weighing the situation a little, Kuroto said to the members of the Team 11, "By now we have already overfulfilled the task. The Reikage-sama himself is here, the risk of continuing of stay in the land of the hot water is much greater, so I propose to retreat to the land of fire immediately." Shui also said, "I agree." After a little bit of consideration, Kakashi also nodded. Land of hot water, on a high mountain crevice. Yujito Ni was standing at a high cliff with an extremely eager expression. Not long after, a Cloud Jonin ninja came out of the crevice and said, "This should have been the hiding spot of the Konoha ninja who attacked the transportation unit." Yujito Ni quickly asked, "So, were there any clues left behind?" Jonin nodded. "Although no direct clue is left, there are traces of a smell, but that should be more than enough." As he said that, the Jonin walked to the edge of the cliff and whistled. Upon the whistle, a small skylark covered in unique silver feathers flew out from a distant tree, and after covering a few laps in the air, it firmly landed on the Jonin's shoulder. The Jonin commanded the skylark to smell the scent in the crevice, after which he threw the skylark high in the air. The skylark took the opportunity to fly, and after circling around the crevice a few times, it flew in a direction. The Jonin said to Yujito Ni, "It found the trace, in that direction." There was only one word from Yujito Ni, "Chase." Instantly, a dozen ninjas turned into afterimages following the skylark. Land of hot water, outside the small cave where Team 11's retreat point. A dozen ninjas arrived outside the cave one after another. One of them, with the best perception skills, activated his sensor jutsu and said to the other ninjas around him, "There are 4 people inside the cave, all of them are above Chunin class, they should be the Konoha Umbu Black Ops Team 11. Yujito Ni stared at the entrance and asked, "Are there any traps placed?" After, sensing a little, the ninja shook his head. There seems to be no trap outside the cave, but many weak chakra reactions are coming from inside the cave. It is difficult to determine what exactly they are. An older ninja frowned. "It's most likely a trap." Yujito Ni said bitterly, "They have been playing around with us for quite long. Now that we finally have some traces of the enemy, I will break through it even if it is some trap." Thinking about the fact that these Umbu were responsible for undermining all of Cloud Village's efforts and plans, the anger and heart boils just like burning lava, and it is about time for it to finally erupt. So, under the leadership of Jinchuriki, the group of ninjas broke into the cave. As soon as they entered, they noticed 4 people from the team, 11, hurriedly packing up. Seeing their actions, Yujito Ni grinned viciously as she said, "Huh. I finally caught your group of mice hiding in this hole." As the Nibi's Jinchuriki, she likes the closed and narrow environment. Here, she can not only display the agile and dexterous characteristics of her tailed beast form but also cut off the enemy's escape route. So, finding Team 11 hidden here was more than what she could have asked for. The 4 members of Team 11 were not too alarmed or panicked by the arrival of the enemy forces, each took out their weapons and took a defensive stance. At this time, Yujito Ni's gaze swept on Kuroto's face, and her brows frowned slightly as if she suddenly remembered him. You are a member of the Hyuga clan." Yujito Ni suddenly remembered the last time when she encountered Kuroto during the task of recovering the scroll of forbidden jutsu stolen by Shino. That is the first and only mission she failed to complete, and it was because of that ninja she encountered, so he left an impression upon her. And now because Kuroto isn't wearing his goggles, she managed to recognize that he is of the Hyuga clan. As she swept her gaze past Kuroto, she also noticed another kid with the Sharingan and muttered, "One Byakugan, one Sharingan, no wonder it is so difficult to deal with your group." It turns out that both of the dojutsu of Konoha were here. Then checking over to Kakashi and Guy, her eyes narrowed again on Kakashi, but she didn't say anything to them, just hummed softly, "Just right, new account and old account, all will be calculated this time." Ignoring Yujito Ni's words, Kuroto looked towards Shisui and Kakashi and said regretfully, "It's Nibi's Jinchuriki, a pity." Shisui also shook his head in disappointment. "Yes, so Kuroto-san, are you going to do it?" Kuroto nodded. Listening to the conversation between Kuroto and Shisui, Yujito Ni suddenly had a bad feeling and immediately shouted, "Everyone retreat now." Boom. 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 However, before her voice could reach the other ninjas, a series of explosions sounded in the cave. The impact was loud enough for the sound to reach miles away. In the explosion, the entire cave collapsed, and the small mountain range where the cave was located collapsed, and along with it, a dozen cloud ninjas that were inside. As the smoke and dust cleared, the huge figure of a two-tailed cat engulfed in blue flames jumped out of the collapsed mountain range. The ninjas that followed her here all managed to barely survive thanks to Nibi covering them within her. Whoosh! 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 Attracted by the impact of the explosion, a group of figures arrived here one after another, and their leader wasn't someone else but the yondaime Reikage-sama himself. Reikage-sama glanced at the injured figure of Yujito Ni along with a dozen ninja and asked with annoyance, "Where is the enemy?" Yujito Ni, who already released her tail beast cloak, coughed violently, and said, "Cough cough. This was just a trap. I am afraid they have escaped long ago, Reikage-sama." Listening to Yujito Ni's words, Reikage-sama fell into deep thought. He seems to be considering something as he cast his gaze into the distance. After a little of thinking, he finally said with some emotions, "It seems that Konoha village isn't as weak as I expected. Maybe it's time to end this conflict." Yujito Ni was surprised by Reikage-sama's words and quickly said, "Reikage-sama, please give me some more time, I swear I will definitely kill them." However, A shook his head. "I am afraid the situation isn't as simple. I have received the news from the front line. Hokage himself led troops and conducted a series of surprise attacks on our camp. With you here, he couldn't resist and had already begun to retreat. Not only that, but the intentions of Rock Village are also unclear. With Tsuchikige's character, he would definitely bite if the situation allowed. We are falling into a disadvantage. Forces of the Rock Village have already been gathered at the border of the Land of Grass. Tsuchikage-sama is sitting quietly while watching Konoha and Cloud fight each other. If Cloud reveals even a small flaw, Inoki wouldn't hesitate to strike." Yujito Ni was taken aback by the sudden turn of events and murmured, "Does that mean all the efforts were in vain?" Reikage patted Yujito Ni's shoulder. "Don't be discouraged, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. As long we increase our strength, Konoha will have to fall." Yujito Ni still grumbled and cursed Team 11 while gritting her teeth in frustration. "Damn it, Konoha Team 11 bastards." Eastern coastline of the Land of Hot Water. The 4 people of Team 11 were galloping along the coast in the direction of Konoha. Suddenly, Kakashi, Kuroto, and Shisui stopped and looked at each other with signs of regret in their eyes. Shisui sighed in disappointment. Sigh. "I didn't expect her to arrive in the cave, such a shame." However, Kakashi wondered, her reaction was too extreme, right? They just came to deal with the 4 Umbu members, why to bring such heavy forces? And how come Nibi's Jinchuriki wasn't at the assault force? Reikage-sama being in the land of hot water is already too strange, not to mention the Nibi's Jinchuriki too. Doesn't it appear to be too weird? Obviously, Kakashi didn't know of the havoc Kuroto caused in the Tenseigan chakra mode. Not only he killed every being alive in the valley but even flattened it entirely, so, him being puzzled by the extreme reaction of the Cloud Village is natural. Listening to Captain Kakashi's words, Shisui glanced at Kuroto-san from the side and thought silently, when facing someone like Kuroto-san, Cloud Village has no chance of winning even with the Nibi Jinchuriki, so having a Reikage is necessary for them to survive. Kuroto only coughed, feeling a little embarrassed, but this embarrassment wasn't noticed by Kakashi and Guy as they were still wondering about Cloud Village's strange reaction. In fact, Kuroto was more regretful that the detonation charm they used in setting up the trap went to waste, so it made him quite sad. After deciding to withdraw from the land of hot water, Team 11 set up a large-scale trap to give Cloud Village goodbye greetings. After setting up the detonation charms around the cave, Kuroto and Shisui each left their shadow clone while Kakashi left 2 shadow clones, one his and another Guy's to complete the trap. Team 11 expected some squad led by Jonin or Chunin to find that cave, so no matter how they escaped, there would have been some damage on the enemy side. However, contrary to their expectations, it was Nibi's Jinchuriki that showed up. Once the Jinchuriki enters the tailed beast state, it is difficult to cause fatal damage. What's more, Yujito Ni is a perfect Jinchuriki, so her cooperation with Nibi will make most of the traps against her useless, not to mention the hastily prepared trap by the Team 11. Even if the trap failed to cause any fatal damage to the Cloud side, the members of Team 11 were not too disappointed. Or even if there were some regrets, they can't afford to be depressed over it. As Cloud Village deployed more and more forces in the land of the hot water, this country became more and more dangerous, therefore, they didn't have any other option but to retreat. So, after digesting the information from the Shadow Clone, they continued to travel towards the Land of Fire. Perhaps because of the conflict between the 2 great shinobi villages, the wandering ninjas in the Land of Hot Water have long since escaped. So, the Team 11 didn't have to get involved in useless battles, and after continuously moving along the coastline for a few days, except for the short breaks they took, they finally returned to the territory of the Land of Fire. In their own territory, Team 11 quickly met with a Konoha ninja team who was responsible for patrol and investigation. Through these Konoha ninjas, they learned about some general situations of the front line. As per Kuroto's expectations, Cloud's raid was just some temptation. This entire conflict with the Cloud Village can even be considered the follow-up effects of the Kyuubi's rebellion, a chain reaction of Orochimaru's defection, and the death of Yondaime Hokage-sama and his wife Uzumaki Kushina. Cloud Village would obviously not want to escalate it into full-scale war as long as there is no benefit, and Konoha's current situation doesn't allow it to push the stalemate any further. Since the situation turned unfavorable for the Cloud side, they showed their willingness to negotiate and Hokage-sama readily accepted this offer. Although Hokage-sama doesn't know the exact situation that was caused by the Team 11 and how much trouble Cloud Village was because of them, he would have chosen to negotiate nonetheless, because Konoha simply couldn't afford a war given their current lack of power and personnel. Now Konoha and Cloud have entered a ceasefire agreement and Cloud Village has withdrawn all their troops from the border of the Land of Fire a few days ago. Inside a damp cave in the Land of Rain. Drip. The echo of water dripping within the silent cave gave a gloomy atmosphere to it. At this moment a Venus flytrap-like extension slowly rose from the ground and a strange face that was half white and half black with green hair and yellow eyes appeared within those green flytrap-like leaves. The swirled masked man sitting upon a rock glanced slightly at the strange existence without batting an eye and asked casually, "How is the situation?" The strange half-black half-white person who appears to be more of a plant and less of a human, while still being partially submerged underground replied to the masked man's question, "The conflict between Cloud Village and Konoha Village is almost over, both parties seem to have agreed for the peace talks, which is completely different from what you expected." The masked man was silent for a while listening to the person named Zetsu, and asked another question, why did Cloud Village slow down their offensive? They were at a complete advantage. At the beginning of the raid Cloud Village's movements seemed unstoppable, completely breaking through the frontal defense of Land of Fire. Including the masked man, everyone believed that this time Cloud forces would be able to reach the Konoha Village without much problem. No one expected that not only Cloud Village couldn't reach the Konoha Village, but in fact, had to completely terminate their attack. Zetsu shook his head, "I don't know. Keeping track of the complete battlefield within the territory of the Land of the Fire already tired out Zetsu, so he was unable to place his attention on the events outside the Land of Fire, and most likely something that happened in the Land of Lightning, Land of Frost, or Land of Hot Water prompted Cloud Village to put forward the idea of peace talks. But what exactly? Zetsu isn't clear yet. The masked man was a little annoyed. Cloud Village wasted such a good opportunity. Zetsu recalled a little of what he heard, and based on the information he had, there is something that happened at the rear of Cloud's frontal assault units. Before their forces withdrew from the territory of the Land of Fire, the deployment of their forces was quite weird. Even Nibi's Jinchuriki left the assault troops all of a sudden and hurried back to the rear. Whatever happened there is the coup. However, before Zetsu could continue any further, the masked man waved his hand. Forget it. He is not interested too much in this. As far as he thinks, whether Konoha or Cloud, they are all just some pieces on his chessboard. Since the best they are useful is for being played around, there is no point in having many expectations off of them. So, the masked man doesn't care too much about them. Since the masked man displayed his disinterest, Zetsu didn't continue the topic and asked, "What are you going to do now?" The masked man smiled. From the conflict against Cloud, Konoha's complete distrust of the Uchiha is revealed. We should start with the Uchiha to further weaken the village's strength. What do I need to do? Find an Uchiha clansman for me. After a short pause, he continued, but this time his tone became gloomier by the second. I need someone useful enough to stimulate the relationship between the Uchiha and the village. Konoha Village, Uchiha Clan. Knock. 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 A rapid knock on the door sounded from the outside of the courtyard of a house. Uchiha Shisui, who had just returned home after a long mission, had to drag his tired body to open the courtyard door, and as soon as he opened the door, the young figure of Itachi appeared before his eyes. The young Itachi noticed Shisui open the door, and he said with clear joy in his voice, "Shisui-san, you are finally back." The Uchiha clansmen were obviously aware that Shisui went on some secret mission by the orders of the Hokage-sama. So, for the past more than a month, when there was no news from Shisui, nor was there information about his presence on any of the battlefield, all the Uchiha clansmen thought that this is Sandaime-sama's handiwork. Deliberately sending their most genius ninja to some mission to get rid of him. Although Itachi didn't believe in it, he was worried about Shisui nonetheless. Now finally confirming that Shisui returned safely, Itachi was greatly relieved. Shisui seemed to notice Itachi's worry, so, with a smile, he led Itachi into the house. After being seated, Shisui briefly mentioned the details, to the extent that Hokage-sama allowed Team 11 to Itachi and reassured him with a helpless smile, "Don't worry, there is Kuroto-san in our team, so obviously there won't be a danger." Hearing some brief explanation from Shisui, and noticing from the gist that Team 11 caused some big troubles in and around the territory of the Land of Hot Water, Itachi looked more curious. "So, Shisui-san, that is to say, Cloud Village slowed down and terminated their offensive towards Konoha because of your team?" Cloud's strange behavior has left all the villages that aren't aware of the exact situation in strange doubt. There were various speculations even among the discussion of the Konoha villagers until the final doubt of something being wrong at their rear was pointed out. As soon as Hokage-sama realized this, he personally led the troops to launch an attack on Cloud's assault troops. As a result, the assault troop had no choice but to retreat under the offensive. Shisui smiled and nodded at Itachi's question. Even now when Shisui recalls the surprised look of Hokage-sama when he listened to the complete report of the actions taken by Team 11, his mood becomes extremely cheerful. When the Team 11 returned to Konoha Village, all the doubts were finally cleared. Precisely because of the surprise attack that Team 11 conducted on the secret warehouse and the regular harassment of the Cloud transport line, the Cloud assault troops slowed down their offensive, giving enough respite period for Konoha. From this alone, Team 11 played the most critical role. After chatting for a while, Itachi suddenly said seriously, "Shisui-san, look." As he said, Itachi's eyes suddenly turned blood red with two black tomo revolving around them. Shisui asked in surprise, "Did you awaken the Sharingan?" Itachi nodded. "It happened on the battlefield a few weeks ago." "Battlefield? What were you doing there?" Again Shisui asked in great surprise. Itachi said, "I have graduated yay." However, before Itachi could finish, a figure appeared into the courtyard of Shisui's house and said, "Shisui, Patriarch is holding a clan meeting, you are to attend it now." Shisui's face suddenly solidified. He nodded to the Uchiha ninja, and after nodding to Itachi he left his house. When he arrived at the mansion, Shisui looked at the faces of people present here. In the room, other than the Patriarch Uchiha Fugaku who sat silently at the center, there were only elites of the Uchiha police. A dozen of them, and without a doubt all of them elite Jonin class. Seeing such a group, Shisui felt a little depressed. Even the special Jonin weren't eligible to participate in this meeting. He can already guess what will be the topic of discussion this time. Patriarch. After a polite greeting to the Patriarch, he sat at the corner silently. Fugaku glanced slightly and nodded. With Shirsue's arrival, the Uchiha clan's meeting officially began. An elite of the Uchiha police force, Uchiha Denki, said, "Patriarch, I have received accurate news that this time the village lost more than 30 ninjas of the special Jonin to elite Jonin class from the Hyuga, Sarutobi, Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Aburame, and Inazuka. Some of the high-level ninjas also died in the battles, not to mention countless Chunin and Genin." As he continued talking, this Uchiha elite stood up and said with a fanatical expression, "After suffering such a big loss, Sandaime actually agreed to the peace talks. Many of the clans and villagers are dissatisfied with his actions. This is the best opportunity for Uchiha." Another Uchiha elite also stood up as he expressed his views. There are also rumors that the Hokage also lost some of the strong Umbu elites, so their strength is more weakened. As soon as the news of the Umbu was discussed, all faces turned towards Shisui. Currently, only Shisui is a member of the Umbu, so Uchiha's source of obtaining Umbu intelligence is only him. Shisui, who was bored until a moment ago, was now the center of everyone's attention, but unfortunately, he could only say, "I don't have much information, because of being away for the mission, but probably 3 Umbu squads died." Hearing Shisui's words, all the Uchiha had fire ignited in their eyes as they were excited one by one. One of them stood up and said to Uchiha Fugaku, "Patriarch, it's the best opportunity, this time the position of Hokage can definitely be the Uchihas." "Yes, Patriarch, please do it. Please give your orders, Patriarch." The atmosphere was getting heated up, as more and more Uchihas got excited at the opportunity. The Patriarch was still sitting silently. Finally, after sighing, his gaze fell upon Shisui as he asked, "What is your opinion, Shisui?" If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.